Batman, the hero Gotham needs, but not the one it deserves. Some may see him as a living shadow or a human-sized bat, but what cannot be disputed is his role as Gotham's silent guardian and watchful protector, the Dark Knight. And I'm sure after watching Christopher Nolan's trilogy, some of you are wondering just how strong is the Dark Knight himself. Well, I saw the main trilogy and the anthology film Gotham Knight to answer that very question. This is the second and final part of my power scale of this particular Batman, so despite its poor quality I would recommend watching part 1 for more context. And just so we're clear, Gotham Knight is intended to take place in between the first two movies, and even if you consider it non-canon, then just consider this a composite version of the character, and unlike last time, we will address his feats in each segment of the film in order of appearance. Now, without any further ado, let us begin. Now, his first notable feat is in the segment Crossfire. Here, he destroys a vehicle by throwing a batarang at it. This should yield around 50 million joules of energy, which is around small building level, and surprisingly, this is also a good bit higher than Bane's feat of punching the pillar. Not saying that he's stronger than Bane, mind you, but this is something to think about, as Bane's feat was the best feat when only looking at the main trilogy. Though you can also argue that Bruce's equipment has higher AP than Bruce himself, which is fine. Now, in the next segment, Field Test, Lucius Fox creates a device which contains an advanced motion sensor that will electromagnetically deflect gunfire. Bruce then incorporates this device into his suit. Also, even though the suit likely looks different due to different animators animating different segments, I like to imagine that it also looks different for this feature. This worked very well to deflect gunfire. In fact, it worked too well to deflect gunfire, to the point where Bruce stopped using it so that he wouldn't risk breaking his rule against killing. Later on in the segment In Darkness Dwells, we see Bruce go up against Killer Croc, who was shown moving and breaking what appeared to be some kind of coffins. Bruce even hits Croc with a bone hard enough for the bone to shatter, and it doesn't do much, though it does stagger him somewhat. While Bruce doesn't go toe to toe with Croc or anything like that, he does still stagger him and take attacks from him. He also blows up a grenade in Croc's mouth, causing him to flee, but doesn't kill him, obviously. And you'll find out much later that if Croc scaling is not applicable to Bruce now, it will be later. I will explain, don't worry. It is also worth mentioning that Croc was under the influence of fear toxin during this time, so he would have been mentally nerfed somewhat, but then again, this is Killer Croc, so not much to nerf really. And finally, Bruce himself is also nerfed going into the next segment, where he's still able to save the day, pretty much. The next segment is titled Working Through Pain. Following the events of the last segment, Bruce struggles to make his way back home due to his injuries and fatigue. As Bruce is forced to, work through pain, he thinks back to his time with Cassandra, who taught him how to, you guessed it, work through pain. This training significantly improved Bruce's endurance to a level that most would call superhuman. This is one of the many reasons why he is able to continue his work, and not even this could heal all of his pain, let's just say. Finally, we are at the last segment of the film, and the one with the best scaling, Deadshot, where he fittingly fights the assassin named Deadshot. While you could easily dismiss Bruce's bullet dodging feats in the main trilogy as aim dodging, here he avoids Deadshot's gunfire after he fires the bullet, so it can't be aim dodging, or is at the very least less likely to be. Now, while the speed of gunfire does somewhat depend on the type of gun, when we consider that Deadshot is an assassin, a great one at that, he would most likely use the best guns he can get his hands on. So the high end of around 1900 miles per hour is surprisingly likely. This would be just over Mach 2, or in power scaling terms, supersonic. Not only that, but Deadshot even survives getting hit by a metal pillar while moving on a train, with this being around 4 million joules, and Bruce not only knocks him out right after, but does so violently that part of the train gets dented in the process, pretty comfortably putting this Bruce in the wall to small building levels of power. And remember in the last video when I said that Bane was stated to be the strongest and fastest opponent that Bruce had ever faced? Well, when we take this film into account, that statement also includes Deadshot and Killer Croc, which would just upscale Bruce in that film even further. Hence why, as I said earlier, if he doesn't scale to Croc here, he does by the time of Dark Knight Rises. Now, one more thing that I want to add that I wasn't aware of in the last video. Apparently, there is a calculation for Batman jumping on the van that comes out to building level. Now, I of course was not aware of this when I made the first video. I didn't know about it until I saw Goji Chronic's Batman vs Predator video, and he didn't even give any explanation for it really, or he didn't even link the calc he mentioned. But when we factor in his other feats mentioned in this very video, it becomes somewhat consistent, so I will let it slide. In conclusion, much like last time, his AP at strength and durability is around wall to small building level. The difference being that the building level part of that argument is now slightly more consistent and concrete. Same story for speed. His travel speed is still peak human, his tech can still get him much faster, his reaction time is still superhuman to supersonic, but again, the supersonic part of that argument is much more consistent than it was with just the trilogy. And his endurance can only be described as superhuman, which I didn't feel I touched on properly on the first part, so I tried doing that here. And with that, I end the video. If you enjoyed yourself, I recommend being on the lookout for any of my upcoming projects, and in spite of its poor quality, I'd still suggest watching the first video if you haven't already, and I suggest you like this video and subscribe so you don't miss any of these other videos. You can always unsub later if you like, and thank you so very much for watching.